for the assistance that they've given us, capacity building, training of our own technical officers, but also providing technical assistance to small island states, especially in Geneva, where we have had to represent our own interests at the WTO. I hope that this will continue so as to allow those of us who are not able to provide the support that we need on our own to represent our interests at the WTO. We have seen progress being made in some areas, and MC12 recently agreed with the subsidies for fisheries, and we hope that in the next round of discussions that we will also be able to make some progress as small states, because all of these are part of the barriers that we face, not only in trade but in production. Over 2 decades ago, a number of small island developing states like Dominica benefited from preferential treatments in markets in Europe, and in our case in particular, the United Kingdom. Since the loss of this preferential treatment, when we have seen the erosion of special and differential treatment to small island developing states, we have found ourselves in tremendous difficulties, especially in the trade of agricultural produce. And that is one of the barriers that I wish to focus on. The fact that we are different, we should be treated differently, because we are unable to distort global trade in any way. Our overall production as small island developing states is less than 1%, and therefore we are not able in any way to have an effect on global trade. And therefore, in the efforts that we make as a Commonwealth of Nations, we must recognize that there are member states which require differential treatments. We have also seen in recent times the impact that actions taken in some capitals in the world, how they impact on our ability to trade. And I speak specifically to correspondent banking issues. And while that may not be any member state of the Commonwealth imposing those restrictions that affect us, but I'm sure that the Commonwealth of Nations can lend a voice to the CARICOM member states in the Caribbean community as we continue to make our case to the United States so that we can have access more easily through the transactions that we do. That is to say, transacting funds through the U.S. banking system in U.S. dollars, especially our proximity and our connection with the Caribbean and the United States. That is one area that has made it increasingly difficult for us to trade. We depend heavily on tourism, mainly from North America. And the fact that we are unable to easily transact funds through the American banking system continue to be a major barrier that we face to trade. These have implications in a number of areas. It makes it not only costly, but it forces people to go on the ground. It forces transactions to be done in ways that will not be part of the financial system, which we all know have their own implications. We recognize the need to fight money laundering, corruption, and terrorism financing. But at the same time, we need to be able to have access to the banking system that allow for more easy trading between us and our North American neighbors, and sometimes from countries throughout the world. Another area that we hope that can be given some consideration is how areas, free trade areas, as we have seen on the African continent, can gradually be done throughout the Commonwealth so that countries can have greater access to the trading in goods and services throughout the member states. After all, we have a third of the world's population And it seems to me that we are the countries where all the action will be in this decade. Because as we see the development and growth in Asia, right here in Bangladesh, in member states of the Commonwealth, in this part of the world, and of course the 53 member states in the African Union, we are seeing more and more that trade, global trade, and growth, economic growth, will be driven by member states of the Commonwealth of Nations. And therefore, we have the influence, and we should have a stronger voice in determining some of the rules that are laid out in at the WTO and as regards to trade among nations. Once again, as a small island developing state, and those small island states in the Caribbean, we have created our free trade area. The CARICOM single market and economy has been in existence for the last 3 decades and has provided opportunities for member states of the CARICOM to easily transact with goods and services without tariffs, and of course, not imposing any non-tariff barriers to trade. Historically, we know the implications that tariff and non-tariff barriers have had to trade. We know of the arbitrary impositions of technical barriers to trade that are being imposed by countries with more advanced economies. Fortunately, we have seen gradually the disappearance of those impositions. But we must continue to ensure that, especially as we move into a technologically driven age, that there are less and less barriers to the free movement of goods, services, and also of people. Madam Moderator, thank you very much for this opportunity.